Welcome to TM1 Social's unique story with Nicholas Renotte, one of my favourite presenters in our industry. Do not have enough nice things to say about this chap, so welcome, Nick. He's gonna, I guess, give us a bit of insight into how we can all really amp up our planning analytics. So, from what I understand, a great demonstration coming up. Before we get started, all your videos and microphones, as always, are off, just to keep things running nice and smooth. There will be a Q&A session after the demonstration, so please do put your questions as we run through. In that Q&A section, they are on an upvote system, so make sure you do vote for those. We'll be answering the ones with the most votes first, and we'll see how many we get through, time pending. There is also a little chat function down the bottom, so feel free to put everything in there. Just to get everyone, I guess, typing something, a little true or false question. So true or false, are elephants scared of bees?
I actually would not have an idea what the answer is to this, but we're clearly seeing some answers coming through. Only bees with guns love it. Fair enough. I mean,
alrighty. So the answer to that is true. Elephants are scared of bees. All right. I'll leave it at that. But if anyone wants to know more, there's plenty of detail online. I think it has something to do with the soft skin of their ears and trunks.
Huh. I'll add that to my to-do list to do a little bit more research into that.
Alrighty, so we'll kick off the interview with Nick then. So obviously we know each other quite well, Nick. But for everyone else here that doesn't know you too much, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so my name's Nicholas Renotte. So I am now currently a data science specialist at IBM. So I've actually, I think we're going to talk a little bit about my journey to where I am now, right, Phil? So I probably won't go. I'll hold off before I go into that. But yeah, so basically what I do is I help a lot of clients with their data and we sort through data problems. And what I'm really about is good technology and using it to improve business efficiency and effectiveness. So whether that be building smarter models using TM1 or using computer vision to detect defects in surfaces or using chatbots to automate data flows or process flows. That's really what I'm about these days. So a lot of the times you'll see me presenting on TM1 stuff or planning analytics or on computer vision and machine learning, or I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, basically anything to do with data is probably something I'm going to be into. So, but yeah, I've been working in TM1 and planning analytics for maybe, I don't know, Phil, what is it, like 5-ish years now? Yeah, it hasn't been that long.
Yeah, maybe about that, maybe a little longer even.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right, we'll say 6. yeah. So that's me. Yeah.
Awesome. And obviously at the beginning of that sort of 6 years, what really sparked your interest in TM1?
Yeah, so I mean, before I even got into TM1, I was like a mad Excel user. So in terms of all my modeling and all types of different finance stuff, so I would do it all in Excel. Like I'd write a bunch of macros. Somebody would then have to try to maintain those macros because I was a bit of a voodoo coder. But basically, I think that the beauty of TM1 and planning analytics is that it takes all of that and gives you a little bit more structure around it, and it obviously scales. So Excel spreadsheets don't really scale that well. Like, I mean, they're super useful and you can do a lot with them. They're super flexible, so you can have a bunch of stuff, you can build a bunch of stuff. But when it comes to scaling and putting something into production, then it tends to come a little bit undone. So mind you, I've built budgeting models in Excel before, I've built forecasting models in Excel before, but really when it comes to distributing things and collecting things and consolidating things and reporting on things, that's when it tends to come apart. And what you tend to see a lot of the time, and myself included, I've been in this seat, is when it comes back to the finance team and you need to consolidate this stuff, then instead of spending more time actually analyzing your data and working through your data, you're just spending time consolidating. So I remember I'd spend 10 to 12 hours after everybody had completed their budget, just trying to collate stuff. I'd be up till 11 p.m. trying to collate stuff and put it into a GL just to be able to get a number to work out what my budget was going to be or what the consolidated version. Then we had to go through a bunch of cuts. So the beauty of it is that it's always consolidating. It's always able to be viewed at a point in time. And I think that's what really drew me to it. So yeah, makes life a lot easier.
Awesome. And I guess skipping maybe 5 or 6 years into the future, where do you see, what do you see in our future in terms of technology coming up?
Well, what I hope to see is actually a lot more NLP integrated into planning analytics. I mean, you're starting to see some of it already. Some of it I'm actually building. But ideally, what I'd love to be able to see is the ability to pick up your phone, right, and go, hey, I want to increase my budget by 10%, and it'll then prompt you. So it's intelligent enough to take a look at your TM1 model to work out what cubes and dimensions that you've got in there and go, all right, your budget is stored against this version. We want to make a change to here. So it'll prompt you through that process and actually make those updates. So I think that's one that you'll eventually probably start to see, or what I'd like to see. Obviously, the use of, that one's great. The use of automated forecasting models. So you'll see one that I'm going to show you today. So you'll actually see that the new integrated forecasting. But I think what you're going to start to see as well is automated discovery of your data set. So say, for example, you just upload a CSV file into Planning Analytics, you'll see the automated model building. Again, this isn't on the roadmap, but this is sort of the type of thing that I think we might see in the future. And a lot more forecasting tools. So the tool that you'll see is really all about time series forecasting and projecting out forward. But there's there's different styles of machine learning as well. So when we talk about machine learning, we typically talk about 3 broad categories. So we look at supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and semi-supervised learning. Looks like we've got a question there. We'll pause for that. Right now, what we're taking a look at is supervised learning. So this is where we've got historical data and we're able to project forward based on our model learning the patterns in that historical data. Unsupervised learning is things like clustering and anomaly detection, and semi-supervised is things like reinforcement learning. Now, within supervised, there's still a whole nother stream, and that's where we look at classification and multi-class classification. So I think what you'll eventually start to see or want to start using is things like predicting churn in customers, predicting churn in employees, and this could be plugged into your workforce models. So a lot of these act as feeders for driver-based forecasting models. So say, for example, you had a big list of customers and you're trying to forecast your revenue. Well, it would help you a lot if you knew which customers you were potentially at risk of losing versus the ones that you knew were 100% going to stay, right? Because then you can start using probability to go, hey, if we're 70% likely to lose this customer, well, then let's drop our revenue estimate for that particular customer, right? So that leads to a more accurate forecast if you have an idea as to what's actually going to come there. Yeah, I probably did a brain dump there, but that's what I'm thinking, right? There's going to be a lot more integration and it'll streamline that process a lot.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, we might just pop across to that question from Andrew here. So I noticed the NLP functionality was removed from version 5.7 of POR. Is there an intention to bring that functionality back and expand it going forward? And if so, do we have an approximate timeline on that?
Ooh, good question, Andrew. So I don't actually have an answer for you off the bat here, but I can definitely reach out to our product teams and find out for you. Ideally, like I'm building a lot of this, a lot of front end and NLP functionality, but in terms of the back end stuff, I can chase that one up for you.
Fantastic. So, and I guess a final question before we move on to your demonstration. If hoping that people are liking what they've heard so far, if people want to see more of these videos and demonstrations that you're doing, where should people go?
Yeah, definitely. If you just go to YouTube and type in Nicholas Renotte, you'll see a whole bunch of my seedy mustache floating around there in YouTube videos. So unfortunately, or well, fortunately, I'm doing Movember at the moment, so they're featuring in the videos, unfortunately. But yeah, so YouTube, Nicholas Renotte, and I'm actually posting a lot. Mo is good for it. Awesome. I'm posting a lot of videos there. So there's 2 videos a week, and they're on a whole bunch of topics. But the cool thing is that all of the stuff that you'll see today, I've actually got embedded in a YouTube video. So if you actually wanted to step through and take a look at how I've built the stuff that you're going to see today, you can actually pick up that video and walk through it as a guided walkthrough. So yeah, but feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. So I think I've got those links at the end of my prezzo.
Fantastic. All right. Well, with that then, I'll hand the mic entirely over to you and switch my video off, and they can look at your pretty face and enjoy the demonstration. So I'll see everyone else back for the Q&A after the demonstration.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Let's share this screen. So it's going to be this one. And we'll slide on over. All righty, cool. Can I just get a quick true or false in the chat if you can now see my slide deck? I always like to double check. And to make sure that you're all still listening. Yep, awesome, cool. All right, we're going. Right, so as I was saying, so my name is Nicholas Renotte. I am a data science specialist at IBM. And today we're going to be taking a look. Let's go to the next slide. Doesn't seem to want to shift. Let's jump out of this. Go to the next slide. Nope. Always happens. First click and it doesn't switch. All right. So today we're going to be going through a bunch of stuff. So first up, we're going to take a look at applications and plans. So in this case, we're going to be seeing how we can build new workflows inside of Planning Analytics Workspace. Now, I think this is probably it's probably one of the most underrated features in the new version, because if you think about virtually every budgeting and finance process, you've always got a workflow, right? So this is just going to make your lives so much easier. The second one that we're going to take a look at, or the second feature, is integrated time series forecasting. So we all know how long it takes to get a simple forecast at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, or for budget or for forecast. So this will make your life a whole lot easier. So assuming you've got some data in your models already, you're going to be able to project forward as far as you want down to the N level element. So if you want to go all the way down to the lowest level of granularity, you're going to be able to do that. And the last thing that we're going to take a look at is the all new visualization. So we'll play with this on the fly, and I'm actually going to ask you guys what you'd like to see and if you want me to tweak a few things. So we'll actually go through that as well. Now, the core thing as part of this demo, I want to keep it interactive. So if you've got questions, drop them in the Q&A or message me in the chat. Let's keep it interactive. Keep shouting out. All right, so we've already got one. So most of your demos are using the cloud version. Is there a plan to demo this using the local version? Great question, Glenn. Well, this is actually using PA local. So right now we're running it on a server. So it's obviously not on my local machine, but this is actually running PA local at the moment. So I'm not actually using cloud. So yeah, that's sort of that answer done. So we can, awesome. Cool. All righty. Let's take a look at our next slide. I've just got a pretty quantum computer there for you to take a look at. Let's actually switch to our live demonstration. Alrighty, so this is the new version of Planning Analytics Workspace. Now, this is 2.0.57, I believe. I think there might even be 5.8 out already. But the first thing that we're going to take a look at is the fact that you've got a completely new interface. So as soon as you step in, this is a little bit of a change from what the original Planning Analytics Workspace or the older version of Planning Analytics Workspace looked like. So as soon as you enter the actual interface, you're going to see that you've got a bunch of new sort of quick links. So from here, you can see that we've got our applications and plans. We've got reports and analysis. So say, for example, you wanted to create a book from a template, or if you just wanted to create a book, that's where you're able to do it. You're also able to take a look at your data and models similar to how you were able to before. So if you wanted to build a cube or a dimension or a rule, you can still do that. Also got a new administration interface as well. Now, one of the things, or one of my personal favorite things in the new PA workspace is the fact that you can access virtually all of your books in this nice menu here. So say, for example, we wanted to set up a folder or access a folder. In this case, I've got all of my stuff in Nick's demos. You're able to access it really, really quickly and filter and sort. Likewise, you can take a look at all your user folders. So if I wanted to go and see what's actually happening there, I can as well. Alrighty, but we're not going to spend too much time on that. We're actually going to take a look at a workflow I made previously. So in this case, you can see that I've got two applications. So I've got 2021 plan, and then we've got 2020 budget. So this is actually the end result of the YouTube video that I mentioned earlier. So if you want to take a look at how this is built, there's a video on this. So if we wanted to actually step into our workflow, all we need to do is hit our three little dots here. So you can see them right there. And all we need to do is hit open contribution. So this is going to take us to our workflow screen. So imagine I'm actually a user here and I need to go through and complete my budget. Now we'll take a look in a sec as to how we can actually set this up. But basically the nice thing about this is that you're basically guided through a workflow. So if you actually need to go through a number of steps, or if you've got new budget users, you don't actually need to train them what they need to do. They can actually just open up that workflow and it's going to take them through each and every step that they actually need to walk through. So in this case, I've got a couple of different books. So in this case, you can see each one of the different components in my workflow. So workflow component 1 is update revenue assumptions. And you can see I've already submitted that. Workflow component 2 is update expenditure. Workflow component 3 is finalize consolidation and review. So if we open that up, you can see that a little bit better there. Now, under each one of these components, I've got a number of steps. So I've got sales review. I've got a time series forecast that I want to do. The nice thing about these workflows is that you can segregate them out into steps. So say, for example, you had a user or you had a process that involved multiple components. So say, for example, you wanted an admin workflow where you came in initially and your tier 1 administrator opened up a number of versions, changed a couple of parameters in your assumptions cubed, and then went and ran a process. The nice thing about this is that you can actually build that into a workflow. So users can actually go in and just tick off each one of those different components now. In this case, our process starts off with a sales review. So in this, you can see that everything's resizing. We can actually click on these. So these are actually just books that I've gone and created previously. So we've just embedded those existing books as part of our workflow now. In this case, everything's looking pretty good. So we've got some monthly weather measures. We've got some sales by store and sales by product. But the really cool thing that I want to show you is this. So if we step into our second process, we're going to open up our time series forecast. Now, this is actually where we can actually begin to use our new time series forecasting capabilities. Now, I'm going to throw out a question to the audience. How many of you are using statistical forecasts already? And are any of you already performing rolling forecasting? And if so, have there been any challenges to doing that as of yet? I'll give you a couple of minutes, but we'll keep taking a look at this as well in the meantime. Now, in terms of how we actually go, all right, so we've got only rolling forecasting, no issues. Thanks for that, Todd. Anyone using forecasts at the moment, or just users entering those figures into your models? Nope, nothing as of yet. Okay, cool. Well, this is going to make it so much easier for you to start doing this, right? We do, but it's not integrated. Okay, cool. All right, that's really good to know. And I think that's understandable, right? Because actually using some of these more advanced models is actually a little bit tricky in terms of integration. So I think if you've seen me present before, you might have seen me do this with T1 Pi. But what I'm about to show you right now is the thing that I've really been waiting for. Due to cubes being too large. All right, cool. Yeah, so this feature is probably one of my favorite things that I've ever seen inside of Planning Analytics. So the nice thing about this is that we can build one of these statistical forecasts really, really, really quickly. So in this case, I haven't done any pre-training. I haven't done anything additionally to my models. And I've actually got my sales forecast down to the month and all the way down to the country, right? Now, if, for example, you're a retailer or if you're a manufacturer or if you've got really low levels of granularity, the beauty of this is that you're able to still use these time series techniques to go and forecast down to a really, really granular level. Now, this doesn't mean you need to go and individually select each one of these elements. You can actually just select a top row. So in this case, I'm grabbing everything that sits below world. So all of those different countries. And to actually build my statistical forecast, I just need to hit two buttons. So I select my row, and then right up here, we've now got a new button called forecast. So we can select forecast, and this is going to open up my forecast UI. So you can see here that I can choose the forecast period that I want to use, and I can choose the forecast end period. So if I wanted to forecast way further out, I could. If I wanted to only do like a month or a 2-month forecast, I could do that as well. If we step into advanced, you can see that we can automatically detect seasonality. You can also choose to ignore certain historical data components as well. So say, for example, let me give you an example of where you might actually use this. So say, for example, there was a worldwide pandemic where you had a huge change in sales, and this influenced what your historical trend looked like. Well, you might choose to exclude that from your historical forecast because it's going to influence the future outcome. If you think about what machine learning is and what statistical forecasting is, we're really using historical trends to predict the future. Now, if you've got an issue in your historical trends or something which is abnormal in your historical trends, well, you might want to exclude that from the forecast. So that's where you do it. Now, if you wanted to, so in this case, you can see all the periods that we wanted to ignore. If you wanted to, you could also save this into different versions. You can also choose to save the upper and lower bound. Will this functionality work on a rule-derived metric? I haven't tried it before, but I'd actually need to take a look. So meaning will it forecast the drivers? Yeah, well, I mean, if you had historical drivers, you could probably do that as well, because you could then use them to predict forward. The thing is, you'd use time series forecasting when you have seasonal numbers, right? So if your rule metrics aren't seasonal, then it's probably not going to generate the most accurate forecast. So what you might choose to use there are those other types of machine learning that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Alrighty, cool. So we're going to set up our forecast. So the first thing that we need to do is just hit preview. So this is going to give us an idea of what our statistical forecast is going to look like. In this case, we've got our preview chart, and you can see that it's pretty accurately mimicking the trend that we've had previously. So you can see we've got a couple of key spikes, we've got a big drop, and then we've got a rise. A couple of key spikes, big drop, and then a rise. So that's really what this forecast is doing. It's looking at these historical patterns and it's trying to project forward. Now, in this case here, you can see that we've got this blue or light shaded blue area. So this represents our upper and lower bound. So in this case, you're always going to have a certain level of error whenever you're using a statistical model. So this shaded area represents that potential error. Any questions there? So is this something that you'd potentially think you'd like to use? TI. Yeah, cool. All right, we'll come to that in a second. Alrighty, so in this case, we can also take a look at our statistical details, and we can also take a look at our prediction accuracy. So in this case, you can see that our prediction accuracy is reading up as high. So that's looking good. Now, if we wanted to go and actually generate this statistical forecast, we can close this, and all we need to do is hit forecast. And this is then going to push our forecast into our cube, so you'll now be able to see it. And you can see that we've actually gone and projected forward from November. So if we go and minimize our fields, you can see that that's been updated. And if we update our visualization, you can see that flowing into there as well. And there you go. That's our statistical forecast done. So you can see how much faster that is. So rather than having a user go and enter a baseline forecast and just phase the budget every single time, which is what tends to happen, this is going to give you another method to go and generate a baseline forecast, again, rather than starting from scratch. Alrighty, was that seasonal and growth oriented? Yes. Yeah. So because it's statistical, it's obviously using, or not obviously, because it's statistical, it's looking at the trend over a certain period. So ideally, what you want to do is you want to have more than a couple of periods of data. So obviously, if you want to take trend and growth into account, ideally, what I normally recommend is to have at least 2 years of data, because this will allow you to see growth month to month, but also growth year to year, growth quarter to quarter. So you're going to have a much better statistical forecast to look like. Can we choose to use upper bound from Dwight? Yes, you can. So if you take a look, if I open this up again, you can actually save your upper and lower bound. So say, for example, you wanted to save your upper bound and your lower bound to a specific version, you can do that as well. So this means that rather than just using your baseline or your upper or your lower, you can choose to use either one of those, right? You can also choose to save it to a different hierarchy version. And this is obviously your baseline here. So prediction is the middle of the road forecast. Cool. Any questions on that? Is it possible to embed the forecast functionality into a TI process with predefined parameters? You know what, Dennis, that is a great question. I haven't actually had a look at that yet, but again, I can chase that one up for you. So I know that's possible through the REST API, not with the integrated one. I'd need to take a look at that. What statistical packages is PA using behind the scenes to generate these predictions? So this is actually using a regression model behind the scenes to actually go and generate these forecasts at the moment. Okay, are assumptions cubes involved? No. So Todd, this is just based on the data that we've got in the cube that we're using at the moment. Can we add additional regression variables beyond the seasonal trend of variables in historicals? So in this case, I'm just trying to think there. So there we're talking about adding it's multivariate regression. So this is just on the baseline that you've got at the moment. So if you wanted to use multivariate regression, then you'd start to look at something like SPSS if you wanted significantly more sophisticated models, or take a look at using Python and the REST API. Okay, what's statistical? Does PA using Python behind the scenes or Node.js? Oh, so that's actually talking about the integration. So the front end, I believe, is all HTML5 and JavaScript. I don't know if they're using, I think they might use Node.js, but again, that's more of a product question. Python is done through the REST API, but the API itself is not built in Python, but you can use Python to access that REST API. Alrighty, cool. All right, we can take a look at some more of those questions in a sec. What did you think of that, guys? So thumbs up, thumbs down, thoughts on using statistical forecasts? Yep. All right, cool. Awesome. So now that we've gone through our first 2 steps in our workflow, we can choose to submit our workflow. In this case, I've already submitted. We can hit that again. So as soon as we go and more drivers needed, too simple. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so this is a regression forecast. So if you're just end user feature, no, this is a user feature. So user would be able to generate a statistical forecast as well. Alrighty, cool. So we've now gone and submitted our forecast. So you can see that we've submitted for the finance managers to review, and we've also submitted it again. Now, in this case, we might choose to go to our next step. So obviously we've shown some more advanced capabilities there. So we're looking at statistical forecasts, but you can still use your regular models in this as well. So say you'd already built a number of books, you can still use those. In this case, each one of the books that I've got is a single tab, but we could still have multiple tab books here as well. This would allow us to embed your existing books and within each one of these processes. So rather than having to go and rebuild a bunch of stuff, start from scratch, rest assured, you can still use your existing books that you've gone and built within Workspace. Likewise, you can still use your spreading functionalities. So if we wanted to repeat, we can do that as well. So you've got that ability to still make those changes, update models, so on and so forth. So we can submit our expense planning forecasts. We've obviously gone and done that super fast. We can also take a look at our workforce plan. So again, if you think about each one of the budget forecast processes that you might have in a traditional workflow, again, you can still embed all of those within these workflows as well. And I'm going to submit this and submit. Now, up until now, everything that I've sort of shown has been to do with a workbook, but you could also embed a view. So in this case, I've got a view, and you can see right down here that I've got a view and I've also got a web sheet. So rather than just using my existing books, I can start to use other components as well. In this case, my consolidated cash flow is showing up as a view. Now, if we wanted to, we can also edit these books. So as I've been stepping through each one of these, I'm actually opening up each one of these books within Workspace. So say, for example, we wanted to change this up and we wanted to make a visualization rather than just using a standard PA book. Well, we can choose to update these. So in this case, I can actually open up my properties and I can start to make updates to my visualization. So this is actually the new, okay, we're not using fields for this one. Let's go and create a different view. So say, for example, we wanted to create a different view now. Well, we can open up our general ledger. So let's let that open up. While that opens, let's take a look at any questions. Nope, not happening today. All right, so what statistical packages? More drivers needed, a little bit simple. Yeah, fair enough. Note end user feature looks like really powerful and useful directions. Take. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so I think again, this is sort of the first iteration of the time series forecast, but again, it's going to get more sophisticated and it's definitely going down that right track. So, and I think this is still where the REST API and things like TM1Py are still super useful. So say, for example, you wanted to embed a deep learning model, or if you wanted to use something like, what's that library? Profit, right? So Facebook's Profit library. You can still use those through the REST API. And this is where I think that this is really nice from an end user perspective. So if you wanted to just quickly create a really fast forecast, well, you've got that ability to do that. For building a more sophisticated pipeline, that's still where you might begin to use the REST API, Python. If you wanted to use something a little bit newer or fancier, you could use Julia or R. So you've got that capability to do that as well. And you've always got SPSS as well. So if you want to drag and drop models, you can do that as well. Alrighty, so mouse is not connected. That's fine, we'll use our touchpad. All right, so say we wanted to build a new visualization. In this case, we're still inside of our consolidated cash flow sheet. We could open up our GL cube. So in this case, this is the new interface for interacting with your servers. So we've still got applications, cubes, dimensions, processes, drawers, and our control objects. In this case, say we wanted to go and build a new visualization. So if I add our cash flow view, we can begin to generate a number of visualizations. Now, in this case here, you can see that our bar is a little bit different to what we had before. So rather than having it attached to our view, we've now actually got it right up here. So you can see that we've got a whole bunch of buttons. So in this case, we've got export, we've got our snap commands, save, whether or not we want to change our cube view format, swap rows and columns, suppress zero. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff. It's just up here now. Now, in this case, say we wanted to actually go and change this visualization. All we need to do is select exploration, which is your standard cross tab. And we can open up our visualizations. And you can see that you're going to have a whole heap of new visualizations to work with, some of which are probably favorites of finance. I'm talking about that waterfall chart there. So you've got a whole bunch of capability to start making some more significantly more advanced visualizations here. So say, for example, we wanted a waterfall chart, we can select that and our view is going to update appropriately. And you can see that you've got nicer palettes as well. So you've got the nicer, much more customizable ability to go and change your different visualizations. Now, this is sort of where I begin to talk about the new visualization engine. So the planning analytics team has actually borrowed some of the components from Cognos Analytics here. So obviously this is still purely on TM1 data, but you can start to see that it's significantly more fine-grained. So you've got the ability to drag and drop and resize. You can see that it's resizing along that grid. So it's much nicer when in terms of user experience when creating dashboards, when updating visualizations. So again, we can open up our fields, and if we wanted to move stuff around, we've got the ability to do that as well. So you can see here that we've got our different filters. We've got our x-axis, our subcategories, and our y-axis. We've also got the ability to repeat rows and columns. I'm seeing David say, finally, I know, right? I wanted this as well, but it's looking great. It's here now. And we've also got properties as well. So if we wanted to update our visualization, you've got a ton more fields that you can play around with. So this is way more sophisticated than what you would have had in Workspace previously. And it obviously gives you a lot more control. So if you wanted to go and build really refined dashboards, if you wanted to tweak a bunch of stuff, you've got that ability to do that as well. So again, you've got the ability to control the appearance, the layout. You can also update your position and size from here. So one thing that I love doing is whenever I'm resizing charts and making graphs, I like resizing based on number, because then I know that everything's going to be the same size. So rather than having to drag and drop, you can also update these size metrics here as well. So you've got your position metrics. You've also got your size metrics. Thanks, Finn. Agreed. I definitely agree. It's looking a lot nicer. And you've also got synchronization metrics as well. So again, similar to what you would have had before, you've got those in here as well. Right. So, but again, you've got a whole bunch of additional visualizations. So if we open these up, you've got area, bars, bubbles, bullets, hierarchy bubbles, network. I know that's a fancy looking one. So you've got a lot more capability to do significantly cooler stuff in here as well. So ideally, this should make your lives a whole bunch easier when you're trying to create presentable results from your TM1 models. Any questions on the visualization side of things or thoughts on that? I'll pause for a sec. Right. So Andrew, in terms of your question, so are there any issues with larger cubes or deeper hierarchies? So my personal preference, even though I went at the top level and did a forecast on everything, what you need to pay attention for. So if we go back to our application. So you saw that when I was building my forecast, I was opening up this entire node here and I was just forecasting. What you need to take a look at is down here, you're going to have a result summary. So you'll see the prediction strength for each one of those components, and you'll want to be able to, ideally, when you're building these forecasts for multiple sets of time series, you want to make sure that you don't have any errors. You want to make sure that you don't have any low value forecasts. Now, where you're going to tend to see low value results for your time series forecast is where your data is not seasonal. So if you don't have seasonal data or your data doesn't really follow a trend, well, then time series forecast might not be the appropriate technique. So this is where you might start to use things like random forest, or you might choose to use bagging and boosting in terms of your machine learning models. And again, that's where the REST API comes in. So again, always check your result summary to see what that looks like. Our model has a separate year and period dimension. So that might require a little bit of transformation to get that done. But again, you could still do it on the month and take a look at what that's going to look like. Ideally, you'd want to have them on the same dimension in terms of an architecture best practice. But it really depends on what your models look like there, Jose. Okay, all right. The last thing that I sort of wanted to show is how to actually build up one of these workflows. So right now, we actually stepped in and we were actually using a pre-built. Okay, hold on, we've got another question. In terms of statistical forecasting, how much control for example, will we have on training the model? How often the model retrains before we release it to end users? And for example, adding additional variables. Great question, Vish. So in terms of this particular model, this isn't actually going to give you that full fine-grained control of how you actually go and train. So really, this is intended to be for a front-end user. So you just click the row, you hit forecast, and you predict. If you wanted to go down a much more, let's say, refined method of statistical forecasting, well, then that's where you may choose to use other tools like SPSS, or you might choose to use Python. Now, in terms of machine learning best practice, what I normally recommend is to monitor your model in real time. So we probably don't have enough time today in terms of going through how to actually do that, but there's actually tools now that allow you to monitor the accuracy and the validity of your model in real time to see how that model is actually performing. And it also gives you the ability to automatically retrain a particular model if it drops below a certain benchmark. So let me give you a great example, right? So say a bank is trying to forecast whether or not a customer is likely to churn, so leave their organization. You can have a model that's trying to predict that. And then as you get the results of that, so say the customer leaves or doesn't leave, you can actually provide that feedback into this particular tool. And if it starts to see that it's not, let's mention that we're answering live. If it starts to see that you're not, or that it's not actually performing that well anymore, it can actually go and trigger off a Python process or a retraining process to go and retrain that model to boost the accuracy back up. So there's ways to sort of handle that. In terms of PA, you've sort of got that front end user streamlined forecasting capability there. Alrighty, cool. David, so it's just time series at the moment there. So if you take a look on, again, self-plug there, but if you take a look on my YouTube video or channel, there's a bunch of videos that actually show you how to perform classification, multi-class classification, and regression as well. So not time series regression. So time series is probably the one that is most relevant for data in tier 1 at the moment. But if you actually start to take a look at some of those other capabilities, I think there's a lot of value in those as well. Alrighty, so now what we're going to do is we're going to build an application and plan. So I wanted to sort of show you what this actually looks like, because I know if you're sitting in sort of central finance, or if you're one of the finance officers that's trying to collect stuff from other people, you want to be able to build these quite quickly, right? Now, first up, I'll show you what the one that we went through looks like. So if we actually step into 2020 budget, which you can see here, this is the one that I created. And in this case, you can see I've added a logo, but you could customize this to whatever logo you want. So if you wanted to apply corporate branding, you could. If you wanted to have your face there, you could. You can also label the title. You can add a bit of a comment, and you can set the plan status. So the cool thing about this is that you can not only set plan status, but you can set step status. So sometimes when you're building a budget or forecasting pipeline, you want to be able to say, hey, I want my workforce, or everyone, or all of the guys that are preparing the budget, I want you to get your workforce forecast to me by Monday. Then I want your general expenses forecast by Tuesday. Then I want everything else and projects by Friday. Well, this allows you to do that, right? So say, for example, you've got your plan status. So when the budget starts, you'd open up everything. But you can also choose to open and close certain components. So in this case, say we've got our revenue and assumptions update, we can actually choose to open and close that. So you've got the ability to lock certain steps within the budget and forecast process. So this means that you've got significantly more fine-grained control there as well. You can also choose the groups that need to actually go and do stuff in each one of those processes. But probably one of my favorite things is the ability to create announcements. So you can actually go and trigger an announcement. So you can go, hey guys, can see that nobody has started, get on it. So you can actually go and send announcements through this interface now. So it's not only just creating a workflow, you've got the ability to go and notify people and a whole bunch of other good stuff there as well. All right, so let's actually go and create one really quickly so you can see what this looks like, mindful of time. So if we actually hit create application or plan, we can actually begin our plan. So in this case, we can set up a logo. I don't know what images we've got floating around. We'll skip the logo for now. All right, so let's actually name our plan. So say we wanted to do 2022 budget. So that's our title. We can then add in a description. Budget forecast. What am I typing? This is a new budget for the next financial year. From there, we can begin to add our steps as well. So all we need to do is hit add a step, and this is going to begin adding a step. So in this case, you can see that we've got one there. We can add a bunch. Then what we can do is begin to assign assets. So normally what I'll do is I'll write what the actual step is. So you might say workforce. And then the next one might be, I don't know, let's say projects. The last one could be expenses. Then for each one of these planning process steps, you can assign your assets. So we can hit assign assets and then say we had a workforce component. I can just type in workforce. And the cool thing here is that you can add a bunch of components. So say we wanted to add all of these, we can. We can then assign our groups. In this case, I've got finance managers, finance analysts, caterers, supermarkets, and wholesalers. So say we wanted to add those two, we can add them. And then we can also configure a due date as well. So say we wanted to make it a week from now, we could just hit 24. So you've also got that nice date picker there as well. So it makes it the user experience a little bit more streamlined. And then you can choose whether or not a user actually has to go and submit this step. So in this case, we can hit yes, require submission, and then open up that step. But we also need to open up our plan as well. And there you go. That's a workflow done, guys. It's literally that simple. So I think that the nice thing about this is that it's really easy to do that. So it doesn't require a lot of rework on any of the existing stuff that you've got. You can start to begin to use it as soon as you've got the new workspace up and running. Now, if I scroll back over, that about caps off what I intended to show. Were there any additional questions? I can see we've got one from Andrew there. Regarding the announcements functionality in the applications area, is there ability to notify burst by email, or would the user need to check the internal announcements interface? I think you can actually trigger it by email, but let me get back to you on that, Andrew. A lot of this stuff is just coming out, so we're only starting to see some of the real-time capabilities there. If there's no more questions, I'll leave you with a couple of things because I always like giving you some next steps. I'm guessing the majority of you here are already Planning Analytics users, so the first link is probably a little redundant, but the next one is probably super useful. So this actually gives you everything you saw today in terms of how I set up workflows, how I actually did time series forecasting, how we use the new visualization engine. It's all in this YouTube video. So how I actually built it for this demo, it's all in there. Plus, I don't share this one a lot, but if you actually check out my GitHub, there's a whole bunch of open source code, including TM1 models with Python time series or Python advanced forecasting models. Plus, I think I've actually got my TM1 chatbot up there as well. So if you want to take a look at that, a little bit of NLP for you. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do there. Alrighty. Phil, what's happening?
Fantastic. All right, just one other question there, Nick. Is TM1 Web now redundant?
I don't believe so. I mean, you've still got TM1 Web is really, really fast now. So I don't know if you've tried it with the new REST API, but you've actually got a significantly faster interface that you can still show web sheets really, really quickly. I personally stick to Workspace now, but it's still got its use cases there.
Awesome. All right. Well, look, thanks for everyone for turning up. Lots of interaction there, which is always great to see. Massive thank you, Nicholas. Very entertaining as always. So please do everyone go and check out his YouTube channel. There's a bunch of cool stuff on there. So I'm sure you'll all get something out of that. Outside of that, if you haven't joined the TM1 Social LinkedIn social group on LinkedIn, I've just popped a link into the chat for that as well. So we've been going for a couple of months. There's about pushing 400 members there now, so that's starting to get some decent traction. Also, if there is anyone else here that would like to share a story, would like to share something cool that they've done, drop me a line, and we can set up something so you can share that to the TM1 community as well. All right. Okay. All right. Look, we'll leave it there. But thank you very much for everyone's involvement. Thanks, Rhys. Yeah, I'll put a link for the t-shirt in there as well if anyone wants to grab one of those. They're not from me by any means. It's a Cubewise thing, but there's plenty of cool stuff on there as well. Yep, sure is. Plenty of great swag. So yeah, Awesome. All right. Well, look, I say we'll leave it there. But Nicholas, thank you very much, sir, and hope to chat with you all very soon.